Where's Sean again?
Here's some paper from our meeting.
Yep.
Hopefully this isn't.
Should be. I really hope this is enough.
Theoretically.
If y'all set up the email chain,
Yeah, I can add you.
can I get on it?
Sure, type your email.
Okay.
Who's that?
Barstow.
Barstow.
Good job, Tom.
Thank you.
The other one.
I put y'all on there too.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Sorry, the bathroom's so far. Give a second. Alright. Are you all good to go?
Did you send it out?
No, not yet. Oh, now it is.
Barstow, Ave,
Yes.
LASA. Thank you.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Alright. Anyone not ready?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Advantage 1 is the economy. Slow growth is coming. Increased immigration is key. Fox 18. The U.S. is still slow growth. The economy 2.5% estimated growth for 2017 to take a lot of advising to get up a few percent of 2015 growth. Its labor productivity, which is driven by capital accumulation, technology advancement, productivity gains driven economic 60s, which will propose a big illegal immigration process for games seen likely in employment-based immigration key to entrepreneurship for Hernandez 18. Immigrants are come for 24% entrepreneurs, 40% new firms, at least one immigrant entrepreneur, immigrants' rights to business firms, employed approximately 560 workers, generally 63 billion in 2012, 44 80 startups, but more than 1 billion funded by immigrants. Immigrants play a crucial media transfer and availability in the U.S. Migration has stock knowledge and skill immigrants key to farm that solves the economy and competitiveness from 14. 70% of the employed labor form farm occupy outside the country. The immigrant contribute 33% total R&D, 40% scientists, India, China, Mexico, Vietnam, or else emerging pharmaceutical producing countries. You will share the market income from 41 to 34%. Emerging markets business companies to this highlights urgency of immigration reform, job and help global immigrant workers in the farm will buy maintain the time to maintain global economic design. Total factor productivity solves 3% growth of immigrants key result 17. Re-employment growth represented by practical policy including reforming immigration ability to make capital, labor capital, immigration promotes second, third, some investment without markets is chief 3% growth challenging growth is falling image any younger without a women workers the companies spot the high workers and decline workers slow US growth in unions US influence increase inflow immigrant workers spread the cost of funding pension benefits increase widely working age increase does not lead to displacement of workers the workforce goes to maintain goods services stimulus production labor more employment rise investment simply demand fairly increase productivity increase upward commercial wages immigrants may quotation more work share scientists workers education, they're more flexible one way of the work, innovation, spreading with all the use, be it shifting on which approach, positive money, which is limited, but economies along the growth potential, they're 1% point increase in GDP per capita, 2% the bottom line, also but high school limits, produce fiscal surpluses, capital formation, entrepreneurship, innovation, ancestral growth, and slow growth causes sanction of extranational order, Hot 17. Liberty maintain or follow U.S. over the country, but estimates in the country cannot tend with climate change, maintain trading combat terrorism disease, or maintain order of military in Asia, in order to use the put its house in order. The U.S. cannot lead a strong response to security requires resources to be with them better. The U.S. may act with what it needs without any distracted debate. The American model will increase only successful in most places death, will growth rate 3% and long-term growth source is key to multilateral ensuring stability, Bro 16. The multilateral system was premised on strong U.S. low growth cellular declines and general average making hard to continue trade liberalization efforts. Was as economic visibly continued U.S. and diversity contested but didn't equal the war. There is no viable global governance system. You take a very rigorous change in the sale of biology without rules and major drops to the alternative global cooperation with all conflict and how to argue all the time economic the U.S. become disruptive multi-national and decline because Trump last up 2018. Systematic separate economic companies withdrawal waves risk of harmful acts and minds percent account chase theft, New York, North Korea, turning off foreign governments with their major companies. First step forward visit the open economic rationing, military Trump might mistreat the EU, economic with about 100 people, what about the world which U.S. sees the national mortgage for an advantage to is nanotech. The U.S. needs separate this is special key for nanotech for Hernandez 18. Next chapter policy where the business that increases to create 10 million jobs and ensure manufacturing property with defining innovation and robots, automation, and electronic vital sectors. These should make it super hard and priority high global workers and engineers and science software more time complementary talent. The United States must have the lowest development innovation community in these parts of jobs. It's sustainable innovation and social poverty and high school immigrant solve its key to sustainable development and growth. Walsh 15. More than financial research, intellectual capital, including businesses, innovation, and the skill immigrant system, leading incentives with disproportionate forward and contribution forward by new individuals will also be statistically significant analysis data on high impact publication and research that has this implication for policy development, immigration, and human mobility facilities, international law training, these interpolitical organizations, government efforts, it's finding important the importance of more liberalist policy in relation to high school immigration, and nanotech foreign priorities, the countries that lead science, technology, and immigrants solve innovation, they innovate and market more patents, YASA 13. Immigrants more likely pursuing study the key innovation economic growth immigrants receiving at least 60% of all engineering doctoral research activity under indicated innovation research we will hire to by 40% of vendors immigrants have been successful training benefits the American economy immigrants commercialize patents higher than neighboring graduates immigrants purpose and nation starts based on technological master of doctoral degrees and plan more youth high-tech entrepreneurs the engineering technology companies by many to produce 52 without 7.4 50 works that makes immigration policy are having innovation creates new businesses for economic growth when immigrant entrepreneurs launch venture elsewhere making this potential innovation job creation economic growth and nanotech stops climate change efficiently solves warming. Clause 17. Neighborhoods have been a pollution, economic free commercialization, the FCC2, or would pollution out of the atmosphere, each product, they have a large degree of elevation where FCC2, and all of this is like a version of the things, because they want to capture more particles, neighborhoods have water set for moving heavy metals that has wastewater, neighborhoods are the most, but they make more possible research as accelerated rejection, forms of food generated by waste, adding out the amount of baggage we produce, and nanotech solves the environment, is key to sustainability, Bill Baxter and Food 16. Management contamination all around the major concern currently intended the chronology of pollution radiation is very effective with transmitted toxic of contaminants such as pesticide PCBs network to utilize air water and improve environment and control contamination development of national catalyst members and hence filtration by optimization all cost limited distributes the base application and quality for environment remediation and success demonstrated but still require verification of the efficacy difficulties how many media can make around subsurface sources of contaminants at hazard release and nanotech solves peak phosphorus ag, REMs, and ocean acidification, Raleigh, and Biswas 16. Nanotech's moms to improve plant growth and improve farming tax, sustainable reduce waste and recently published research, successfully use nanoparticles approach, will consider natural reserves and reduce water contamination, nitrogen, and phosphorus fertilizer become fixed and natural particles have unique capable and social features neighbors generating biological processes and nanoparticles, especially when it comes out of soil. And despite Trump, the U.S. consensus warming tech is key, Gardner Doyle 18. There's this going to be the world Trump says this what government does agency protecting my activities do efforts to climate change we don't anticipate the nations to people who choose our to see very solar climate policy on about the US everyone to tackle climate change and entire kind of Trump to push to address climate change the US can support technology innovation development modern efficient mission reduce emission we can still stop warming action now is key for 2018. The reports that global warming reduces the temperature of the world is forces that there that represent what prime media reduction emission feature because the UN report means that more than 6 references temperature and happening the reports in the middle and she said warming causes extinction multiple scenarios sharp 2014. The reason why says survival climate change was to the climate change affecting human isolation 30 million people that has disaster climate change and contribute for certification ocean negligence but there's double less surface type person that means less triggers and less fish and increased temperature will contribute to threat to agriculture and support the spread of diseases and malaria physical population within 1 million people depending on those resources in those countries coming to share those resources both on the droughts felt heavy and uninhabitable solvency plan. The United States federal government should substantially raise the annual limit for the EB2 and EB3 visa categories limited to per country limits and exempt the dependent response agents and individual graduates and sanction new fields from the numerical limit. The whole plan is key to solvency and FAP7. The rules will tell them what facts and where they citizens are making investments with the career rate fixing risk on the individuals. This company to make new company capital. If your person is having seen the absent to cash out the way receiving long, presumption will be some of the limitations ceiling, immigration to the commercial limits and the best written policy being started per residence, the real people to the with all the legal policies to be subsequently, all labors along reaching the 10. The plan streamlines the green card process, Colleyville 13. Congress and EPC and the common quarters we do with the visa with the period limit 140 in Holland with the base economy needs a GP triple would have made him and immigration is a very safe and global with the back very limited which limit would have reached EPU items and EPU items of applicants from heavy subscription countries and plan solves tech needs Anderson 18. Professionally forced to leave the country already, professionally attended to me, long regarded. The Congress needs them, there's a chance to that person that would reduce 1 times the second raise the envelope 140k third, except the events with numerical individual graduates, and such an like these reforms, the main solution, and use companies better can be global markets. What especially is the uncertainty of years awaited. Alright. I'm good.
So then, the first piece of Hernandez evidence you read on the nanotech advantage, I guess, how does it prove there's a shortage? It just seems to say that America should let in more foreign-born scientists.
Sure, I think the Hernandez evidence isolated is making references to current immigration and technology policies. That sort of nostalgia-driven policies, i.e. immigration restrictionism, is creating a demand for this.
It's also making a predictive claim about biotechnology and nanotech as rising industries of the United States and saying that in the future they will be more necessary, so we need to get more workers in those fields.
Yeah, where does it make the claim that we don't have those, like, enough scientists now?
One, I think our evidence is specific to a couple of things. So the Walsh evidence says that immigrants make up most of the nanotech industry specifically. Therefore, like, since we're not able to get into the U.S. now as easily, there's a lack of restrictions there. Also, the evidence, the Reynolds evidence also says that competition in pharmaceuticals, people are going to work in countries like Vietnam, China, Mexico because of competitive industries in those areas.
Sure, I guess nanotech relies on REM, so I guess how is it a sustainable form of solving the environment?
Sure, the Raleigh and Biswas evidence isolates that nanotechnology can conserve natural mineral reserves, which means that it's much more efficient than current statistical technology.
Okay, The econ advantage, you say you solve for 3% growth, why is that 3% growth necessary over like 2% growth or 4? Why is
Sure.
that the bright line?
I guess the Haas evidence isolates that 3% is sort of the metric for the stability of the U.S. economy, and that is the baseline at which the U.S. can sort of maintain its alliance commitments and check back against international testing that is ongoing.
Sure, I guess why though, is like 3% necessary to check back against other alliances? Why?
3% growth is a metric for stable U.S. economic growth. That's the consensus among most academics.
Sure,
and
the
international.
Reynolds stuff about pharma, I guess why are immigrants just key to like fill in positions in pharma? Is it the same like internal link as the nanotech stuff?
Sure, it's similar, but the Reynolds evidence also isolates that the U.S. is currently losing its competitive edge in the pharmaceutical industry as to the other countries that Sam already spoke to earlier. That's why immigration is uniquely key.
I guess why is losing our competitive edge, why does that matter?
I think the impact of the advantage is those factors are key to economic growth. 3% growth is the metric with other countries evaluate the U.S.'s credibility as an international leader. And Russia and China would test the U.S.
Sure, the decline stuff of like multilateralism, I guess what other countries, if there's a decline in multilateralism or trade expectations, why doesn't necessarily mean Trump is going to lash out or like there's going to be an escalation?
So I think, first of all, that's in the context of the counterbalancing argument. I believe you're referring to the Burroughs evidence, which makes that claim. Second, the Lasha argument is more of a short-term impact, where it refers to the decline that is predicted to occur as per the Fox evidence will cause Trump to lash out. So I think there's two separate sort of scenarios.
Okay.
Before the one C, do you mind if you switch me?
So can we use your stand, by the way?
Yeah, sure. I'm looking at everyone's like Chipotle orders. I'm just like, dang, I should have just formatted mine like that. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, no, you'll get the roast when you get it.
I know, I can't escape it now.
You can order no hate.
You can't order.
It's just depressing.
The order is 6 off, then econ, then nanotech.
Two more.
It should be,
What?
it should be sent.
Oh. Give me a second to open it. Yeah, sorry, it's opening still.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. Just tell me.
Alright, I should be good.
All right, is anyone not good? Okay, cool. First off is the R&D counterclaim. The United States federal government should substantially increase funding for research and development in basic technologies and technological infrastructure for private sector American companies. The counterclaim is key to economic growth and resiliency. Keen 17 to their technology with more far-reaching impact over the past 50 years and from federally funding R&D, recycling, smart home technology, killing, dialysis machines, airport explosives, reactors, agricultural costs, all these rely on federal investment, both university graduate, thousands of undergraduate and graduate students who provide a constant supply of educated, trained workers. Federal R&D investment would benefit from the active engagement, monetary support of business leaders and professionals. Nation's most active innovation hubs and successful regional economies have similar factors that drive economic growth and resiliency, including top-tier research institutes supported by the federal, state, and private funding. Second off is the wages. Decide wages increasing. Now, Mukani, 131 U.S. labor costs increased steadily. The employment cost index increased 0.7% wages, rose 0.6% in the first quarter after advancing 0.9% in the prior period. Attending that was the biggest increase in June 2008. Attending labor market gradually pushing up wage growth and employers raising compensation to retain and attract workers. The ECI is one of the better measures of labor markets. Like is considered a better predictor of core inflation benefits for all workers. 1.7% increase. High skilled immigration collapses wages. Huang and 10 negative impact of immigrants on the high wages of high skilled native workers. A 10% increase in employment due to influx of high skilled immigrants reduces wages of native by 4.4%. The results are consistent with predictions. And then increased labor supply puts a downward effect on wages. So high wages are the single most important factor for growth. Bivens. In 17, the failure of wages been the root cause of inequality and concentration of economic growth at the top of the income distribution. Rising inequalities, inequality has boosting wages with benefiting aggregate economic outcomes. Primary concern growth has been too slow spending. Crossed by their Haas evidence that cause of extinction. Third off is the auctions counterclaim. The United States federal government should establish an independent standing commission on immigration of nonpartisan economists charged with a mandate to set up and administer a quarterly sealed bid auction with a price band and resale market that replaces visas for employment-based legal permanent residents, specifically EB2 and EB3 categories. The current number of permits you should do employers to sponsor employment-based legal permanent residents within should be adjusted quarterly based on the price of the auction. The number of visas issued should initially stay within existing caps, and in subsequent quarters should be adjusted up or down depending on the auction price of the allocation of permits disproportionately. Factor favors large companies. The United States federal government should set aside an adequate number of permits on which for small companies to bid. The United States federal government should get rid of the 7% country cap. A commission that administers an auction with the price band creates a signaling mechanism to adjust visa numbers according to actual labor demand, or in instance of any intent of the government set a reserve price, minimum price to which no permits are sold. The government set a maximum price of exists of the maximum price. The government should then increase the number of permits available. Adjusting quantity of permits during the action would reassure employees that adjustments in permit prices will be gradual over short periods of time. The government would create an independent agency to give advice on the number of permits and reserve prices. The independent agency would make decisions in a timely manner. The Congress or the executive branch making new immigrants responsible to the business cycle. One of the key advantages of the government adopted transparent rule for setting the number of new permits available is where the resale market for permits becomes usable. Permanent prices is signaling advice on the current system is the same number of legal permanent residences has been regardless of employer demand. Fourth off is a settler colonialism. Just that the liberal ideal of immigration is rooted in the exceptionalness of America as a free and tolerant city on the hill that eclipses the reality of native dispossession and genocide. Both in 15, the liberal considering immigrant nation immigrants substitute the non-consensual basis of American democracy of immigrants defining someone who desires America the deriving of American citizens. The dispossession by American nation appears an ethical community rather than product of violence before naturalization ceremony for immigrants were relative. The U.S. conducted naturalization ceremonies for Indians become citizens through the Dawes Act. The history of Dawes naturalization forgotten the presumption that only immigrants are individualized when settler becomes an immigrant. The settler even becomes a refugee. The native familial identity of the settler is depends on the disappearance of the actual native inhabitants of America. Imagining North America as a settler did not reject indigenous property claims presuppose the erasure of Indian presence. Settler colonialism renders land exploitable waste and indigenous lives especially killable chattel. Cravers in 17, the colonizers come to exploit, but to say the geospatial collapse of the metropolitan colony at the same time in place. Settler colonialism is happening right now. Settler colonial technology enable plunder disappearance, recapturing land as property, and severing indigenous people from the land. Land is a political target, fracking biodiversity, damming rivers and flooding valleys. 70 to death, like saying the words of where human life relations shaped by landed models of empire, the psychos, the colonialism, rising the binary of the settler and the native. The alternative is to refuse the act to force a confrontation with the settler imaginary. Henderson 15 discovered the instability of the court of settler subject can be expressed as a rational and exciting subject. It's limited to an avenue in which the process says settler colonialism can be subverted, creating country which can reopen why the cultivation of these crafts is necessary starting point to decolonizing as it continues to destabilize settler subject. The repetitive practices of everyday life are awakened settlers face their meanings and the ease of repetitions to try radically and otherwise move takes the settler colonialism into disrupt the way reproduction of settler subject. Settler colonialism perpetuated through double move to erase indigenous people and indigenous settlers by naturalizing their violence inherent in their existence in colonized territory. The continual reproduction of settler imago is necessary to secure the settler subject. The total ratio of indigeneity is grotesque. The desire of the settler must be constantly disputed. The affirmation of indigeneity open country within the settler subject itself through which the ethic of decolonization can emerge. Fifth off is the basis that anti-immigration sentiment drives up support for Trump. The plan reverses that. In Bacon 17, there's been force in the way anti-immigration sentiment. Republican Party hardline immigration policy been growing in its animating force in GOP politics every year. 73% of Trump voters said immigration was of very high importance to them. A hardline sense of immigration proved to be a winner. Republican primary senators with more hardline positions have done better against primary challenges. Immigration may be the issue most responsible to Trump's winning the Republican nomination. Trump engages in withdrawal to fulfill a campaign promise and rally support from his base. That causes a NATO impact. Wandler, 12/20, with the resignation of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, Trump is president unbound. Trump announced the U.S. would pull out of Syria. Common thread to Trump's actions. What is the conviction? The political survival depends on securing his base of supporters have pounded him for his failure to stop the wall full troops out of Syria because if fulfilled a campaign promise, Mattis was the last and most important of the officials that separate our country from chaos. Trump had calculated pulling out American soldier would be awaitable in a campaign pledge is based increasingly. The rest of the president decided to pull the trigger now calculating what to deliver and quickly we shouldn't be surprised we're beginning the process of getting out of NATO. That causes European and global proliferation and Russian nuclear first strike. Acts in 18 if Trump did was all Europe would become vulnerable to Russian nuclear attack or intimidation, leaving NATO would force European countries to toss by the NPT to Russia, require them to trade as integration would lead the countries all over the world pursuing their own nukes and country nuclearization and increasingly plausible to Trump. Escalates his criticism of the alliance. US keeps 180 warheads in Europe for the NATO article B as held. Keeping the peace in Europe deterrence could collapse without American nukes on stability, showing mistrust of Putin former allies, could test Putin tempt Putin to launch his own limited nuclear strike. If Putin decides to cross the nuclear threshold, it will be based on the calculation that our allies won't be willing to escalate in the alternative Europe. Might build a large nuclear arsenal to retard global proliferation. Nothing would do more to cause nuclear anarchy than wrecking NATO. Economy advantage. First production. Productivity is the highest on record. Irwin. In 18 per person, GDP is at the highest level on record. Unemployment level is lowest in 18 years. The economy looks positive by almost every measure. And strong employment numbers are impressive and unexpected. 2nd January was the best ever. Castleman. 131, 304,000 jobs were added last month. The economy is expecting 172,000 American employees have added jobs for 100 consecutive months. Unemployment rate is near a multi-decade low and wages are rising. Disruption doesn't appear to have dissuaded private sector employees from a strong pace of hiring. Economies are getting nervous. That isn't leading them to hold off the hiring. No. Evidence of economy slowing. Workers are getting some bargaining power. 3. Growth is high and sustainable. Yandel. 18. The economy is growing faster. We may see 2.8% growth of the Fed set for productivity rose to 1.3%. Employment turned a corner in September. 4. Farm innovation fails. Song 15. Pharma. Productivity has been declining for decades, falling at 80-fold. Output remained constant irrespective of the investment portfolio management have failed to protect it from patent cliffs. Areas with low probabilities of success translate into weaker competition. All easy. Drugs have been made public. Distrust has led to higher hurdles of financial factors. So many had its tendency at the basic research report bias. 5. Drug pricing and reimbursement are all causes. Biospectrum. And 19. Drug pricing pressure from regulators, patients, policies, and payroll will drive down drug prices. Given that the increased pressure from the Trump administration, constant containment measures are leading to tougher market conditions, and companies are reassessing their strategies. The market forces 6. No Russian and Chinese war. Nuclear deterrence check. 7. STEM shortages a miss. Smith and 17. Concerns over shortages. Qualified scientists are nothing new. There's some concerns little evidence about sustained and long-term shortages. The rhetoric is strong alternative accounts. Absent the shortage debate is characterized by poor quality data, methodological and conceptual challenges. There's no evidence to support the shortages and feeling a little different as if they would be sustained. There should be no over-reliance on technology that involve projecting passions down critical acceptance of employer and estimates of future shortages. Maintaining accounts of workers have been in the interest of the industry. Concerns with the allocation of resources. Nanotech first on sustainable motto. Intense scarcity analysis will warn that the growth of nanosolar may be curtailed due to reliance on scarce minerals and rare earths. These technologies will never be able to contribute to more than 2% of global energy demand. Large-scale government funding for technology that will remain a marginal, non-efficient way to tackle the energy and climate crisis. 2nd, no warming impact. Laurea. 18, CO2 in the atmosphere exceeded 410 ppm in April. That change is inevitable and scary consequences. Increased CO2 levels cause sea level rise, heat waves, and superstorms are continuing full speed ahead with an experiment with our planet. No impact to biodiversity. Brand 15, transfer conservation are looking bright. We're re-entrenching the slowing depletion. Mass extinction limit is 70% of species. That's not going on now. The range reflects uncertainty. Estimates are vary 100-fold from 0.01% to 1% endangered species. If all win, extincting the rate of capture over 1,000 a year, then we might be extinction of ocean animals. Few extinct animals are highly mobile. 6, adaptation checks parkour. 17, the most likely levels of warming are very unlikely. Mark it unlikely.
Alright. Good?
Yep.
Alright. Auctions counterplan?
Mhm.
So, I get that you like set up the commission. I'm just confused on, how is the initial price determined, I guess?
Yeah, the initial price is determined based on demand. It's a Vickery auction, which in economics means
Okay,
that it's
I know how a Vickery auction
Well,
works.
you asked the question of like how it's
Okay.
determined, so I was trying to answer that. So
I just
it's a
no, I
Vickery
know how
auction where
Vickery
you
auction-
submit a sealed bid, i.e. other people don't see your bid. Companies would submit what they view to be valuable enough, how much they are willing to pay for a high-skilled immigrant. Then that dictates how much they end up paying for that visa. That shields the link to wages because it means only the immigrants that are actually needed come into the US, i.e. the shortages that exist now will be filled. But there's not an over surplus, which means the wages don't decrease.
Fine. And who starts the auction?
Yeah, so the Standing Commission on Immigration of Nonpartisan Economists would start the auction, so to speak. So
What prevents sort of competition among bigger companies from rising the value of those?
Yeah, quote, if the allocation of permits disproportionately favors large companies, the United States federal government should set aside an adequate number of permits on which for small companies to bid. So small companies still have a seat at the table because there would be separate
Who determines
auctions.
what is an adequate number of bids / visas for small companies?
I mean, unless you have an interpretation of what adequate is, we think that's like a gut check that we trust the commission to make of like the number of visas that small companies need. We would set those aside so they don't have to compete
This is a
with large
congressional
companies.
committee?
It's not a congressional committee, it's an independent standing commission.
Right. The critique.
Yep.
how does the confrontation with the settler imaginary, I guess, resolve sort of the exploitation of land?
Yeah, our Henderson evidence says that only by confronting that settler imago, i.e. the rhetoric that surrounds immigration policy, that this land is not ours to be reducing restrictions on, only by attacking it from a rhetorical strategy can future ideas of decolonization be achieved. Henderson says that those cracks and fissures within the settler mentality can be opened wider, and only by confronting those cracks and fissures and opening them can we eventually lead to decolonization.
Right. The water war scenario, it's not specific to sort of...
We didn't read it.
Oh, you didn't read that? Okay. Great. The wages dissent, how does your Huang evidence account for like the thesis of Griswold that says that high-skilled immigrants can lead to spillover jobs that will create new demand in the labor market?
Yeah, so the answer to Griswold is that before that spillover happens, there's a distinction that there's a short-term decrease in wages, which is fast enough to trigger our impact. And if you win that there's a spillover over some long amount of time, that's not soon enough to resolve the economic collapse that would ensue.
Okay, what internal link claim makes the distinction?
It's the one in C, so we haven't read a card answering a card you haven't read yet.
Okay, no, but I'm asking you, what evidence makes a distinction between sort of like this short-term decrease in wages causing economic collapse?
Yeah, I feel like this is a really stupid question, but I was typing something. Just 5 off. They were red. Yes. Okay. I mean, what is a fair question? Yes.
Are the counterplants and the K conditional?
Yeah. All right, software 646. It should be sent. Is everybody good for the word? All right, it'll be econ, nanotech, auctions, R&D, base, wages, and okay.
first one, the advantage, there's a distinction to be made between quarterly and yearly growth. All of our office, about 3% growth, is contingent on yearly 3% growth. The group of the first three pieces of evidence are all about quarterly data. It doesn't take into, it's our evidence is a predictive claim about slow growth coming in the future. Even if the economy is doing well now, our evidence, all of our evidence indicates it is fading away. That's the Anderson. That's the Hernandez evidence from the 2016. The economy's fine now, but slow growth is on the way. Nova, 1029. My economists say this is the beginning of the downhill. Don't expect the economy running hot in such ways. Neutral with business investment growth. There was a policy 8.8% the firm. Expects GDP growth to slow down 2% next year. Feds on projections out US GDP falling to growth like 2.5% next year before slowing 2% yield curve. The many investors who watch closely getting into the territory. The main economists say indicates a recession is heading. They say pharma fails. We're not going for this internally, but we still have the total factor of productivity and the entrepreneurship advantage. We'll concede that the war and their evidence says R&D funding has no effect on pharmaceutical companies. You can cross-apply this to the R&D counterplan proves the funding fails. Deterrence. The only thing they say is deterrence means there's no lash out there. That doesn't assume any of our counterbalancing arguments. Lack of 3% growth means Russia and China counterbalance the U.S. because they perceive economic weakness. The Smith evidence is absolutely awful. It's not specific to nanotech, which means you shouldn't evaluate it. It also cites data from the 1940s and 1970s, which means it isn't contextual to anything the app is talking about. Go to nanotech. There are first arguments about unstability arguments. App solves for all the problems with current nanotech. First is scale, second is efficiency, and third is marketability. All of those prevent it from being scaled up to an extent where it can't be resolved. Also, it takes forever to solve. It takes forever for the RNs to run out. Definitely taking enough carbon out of the air, time to resolve any bad impacts of warming. That's the Clark Bass Pros. The evidence to follow an inevitable argument. No, it takes 2 years. We still have 2 years to act. That's the definitive evidence. It says we still have time to act. Adaptation does not solve data. Don't answer any of the warrants under evidence like migration, which the global displacement of coastal populations. It means 3 billion people have to move, causing resource conflict and food wars. They don't have an answer to. Biodiversity, that's not impact. They were going for forming auctions. It doesn't solve first nanotechnology. Nanotech development is working in small tech companies as a nascent field. Auctions means that small companies can't hire qualified talent into the counterplan. Can't solve nanotech. Second is total factor productivity. Only raising the caps on EB2 and EB3 visas can solve spillover jobs. Auctions severely limit the amount of immigrants that come in. Third is entrepreneurs. Small business can't compete with larger companies for jobs, which means they can't solve the internal link. In auctions decrease high school immigration. Look for other countries with the easier entry systems. Auction one, the auction makes modeling senior immigration more expensive by taking away a portion of the immigration gains immigrants. Will less prefer countries with a point system and collusion. It's impossible to administrate an auction. It requires regular time adjustments. Adjustments about initial quotas means quarterly checkups. OECD's 9 of the odds does not rationalize this well, so why the system could complicate the problem because at the time dimensional the possible variable duration the system will fail to adjust over time during these and is disincentivized to reinvest in training to meet the longer term ratings will be inauctionable, share limitations and critical application problems auction may not bring true market efficiencies. Visa hoarding large companies will just bid high enough to collect tons of visas and sell them to huge profit. Resale market artificially inflates market value. Resells visas to less needed areas drastically cuts auction efficiency. Collusion is impossible to administrate an auction. It requires time adjustments and permutation due to the plan to prioritize workers in higher need areas and permutation due to the counterplans. Justified process counterplans result in the affirmative or abusive because they prevent reading add-ons and steal 8 minutes of one I see off. It's preferred debatability over desirability and it should doesn't mean immediate dictionary intention should to express conditions. See also shall intend to. I shall go later. Affirmed to the counterplan is affirmed through the process of the counterplan restrictions are limitations by regulation, contract, or statute. FLD, no data, any limitation on activity by statute, regulation, or contract regulations, government action, or rule, black laws, Black's law, and no data act regulating rule for management, conditionalities, voting issue returns, destroys effective policy making, analysis avoids meaningful class, destroys differentiation, kills advocacy, seals dispo, solves their offense, independently judge cases, bad creates two errors, advocates in our decision making, destroys responsibility, consequential education. That's a prereq to their impacts in voting issue returns, permutation to the plan, and designate half of the visas for the auction and auctions lower wages. Economists tend for importing a worker would pay on lower wages than equivalent local contract would be entered, but the best option would be to find a new job with a lower market wage than the employer, but then give reduce the existence of such that would allow the employer to reduce wages further, and it links to politics because Trump literally does the plan. It obviously links to base R&D. The counterplan doesn't solve first is staffing. Immigrants make up more than half the R&D sector, and key sectors like nanotech, which makes up a third, which makes up most of what the advantage the app's about. That means the app's a prior question. That's the Walsh evidence and intellectual capital. This said, one, I see Walsh makes two claims that only mean the app can solve immigrants are the foundation of U.S. nanotech. The intellectual capital is more important than funding. Third is competition. This said, foreign workers are going elsewhere now, which is increasing global economic competitiveness. Admitting more immigrants is the only internal link to the economy and patenting. That's the only way to adequately integrate any innovation. Immigrants do it better and faster. That's the answer evidence from the 1AC and counterplans. Federal R&Ds already happen. It's not enough. App's a prior question. Washington 15 governments have approaching technology. The U.S. invested billions already. The acts of budget 2.1 billion initiatives targeting manufacturing and biomedicine and key funding areas and permutation to both through the app increase infrastructure and funding. It shields link. First is wage increase infrastructure native capabilities would open up labor markets, meaning no wage decline. Second basis this is American first policy focusing on U.S. manufacturing and go to face.
App solves the impact posted in Haas indicate economic stability is the strongest internal link to Trump's last shot. The shutdown was humiliating defeat, which upset the base. Not in 19, this is humiliating to render the stunning display of its full numbers, plummeting Trump's angry conservative base and a reputation of master deal. And the status, even if they win the union, this claim the link is atrocious. All this past through shows by base word is temporary at best. There's absolutely zero risk of link. Trump's call for increase and its skilled immigration government 18. Trump's pressed lawmakers back in American immigration. They should consider to help all companies moving to the USA. Trump has repeatedly called for American-based immigration that would cause for entry for those still deemed beneficial. And Trump spins the plan as a dumb. Robbins, 17, overhauling the immigration system, enjoys bipartisan war. Immigration is one of the least controversial issues to make Americans involved with persuasions, including Trump borders and willingness war. Immigration that would bring the maybe systems for 21st century by allowing companies to recruit top talent support. Is growing relatively popular force of growth. The American economy supporting the administration's growth and job creation goals. Yes, on immigration would be a legal legacy making move for Trump. His exit goes to China. But go to the wages. Dissent case outweighs global crisis are inevitable, so it's charged after the affirmative. The dissent makes zero sense. They collapse the evidence in the context of low skilled labor. That doesn't implicate the app. They don't have evidence about nanotech or pharma. So default app. Then third, the evidence straight up hands us an internal link. It still says that lack in aggregate demand and productive capacities was preventing companies from increasing weapons. The app's introduction of new technology and consumers clearly results as that's risk world evidence in labor monopolies, weakened unions, and minimum wage decay, inflation targeting increased wage stagnation. In the status quo, Abraham and 19 political decisions are largely responsible for collapse of the economy to blame on market forces, free trade, and specific policy decisions, efforts to weaken unions, but decay, minimum wage, and monetary policy provided as low inflation every time, pulling the balance of power away from workers and towards their employers. Monopoly power explain wage stagnation, monopoly power, less than lower wages. The workers and markets are dominated by a relatively small number of companies. Employers mark the card at employers, and wages are low now. Several months per minute. And 18 wage growth remains low. Wage lag because there's no labor market slack. Employers may wielding new market cloud against workers, or a byproduct of the fact that wages are still effectively adjusting from the recession or inequality itself produces a dynamic that drives down wages, and there's no link. Immigrants do complementary jobs and create new employee demand. Vaccine and 18 afforders contribute to innovation, productivity, growth in science, technology, high skilled immigrants having crucial growth of IT, which is a revolutionary production of Indian immigrants force starts immigrants meet the demand for the native more workers shun find unattractive doctors for many working in the inner cities. These positions are good for minority and poor patients in the economy and the health. And labor certifications ensure there's a genuine need and guarantees that immigrants are paid a prevailing wage to prevent wage pressure and cheaper goods. Even if they do pay less for labor, the cost of production of these goods is lower, goods are cheaper, so that doesn't increase in innovation. Immigrants are empirically job innovators, so even if wages temporarily decline, productivity will boost even out. That's the Connor evidence. That's the Griswold evidence. Go to the K. Our frameworks they give a competitive alternative impact from you get to weigh benefits of similar government action. Keep the alternative through the scope of solvency. Even if they win link arguments, that's not a sufficient reason to vote nay, unless they have the capacity to resolve them. Debating the case of bottoms to engage in truth-telling decision-making. Candidates change about what ought to happen their framework and statements. Office shows specificity, educationally valuable literature. Cause infinitely aggressive debates about unproven malicious assumptions. Obviously, extinction outweighs. They read extinction impact, so I shouldn't really have to go here. The alt doesn't change the framework. States operating within this takes out all the root cause claims. External impacts justifies epistemology that are heuristic. Makes more structural violence more likely to reach 14. If human is more morally better, it would be fewer words here. Some say our residents, assumptions, and false all the roles is not and a political argument that prevents your shared goals of real ones to cut off between nuclear capability, structural issues, manufacturers, underlying complex states are the only relevant actors that compete for more consideration or secondaries. Security and survival. The search for individuals actions they do political leaders compelled to favor security, even if human beings become morally enhanced. Human kind may still have to face the same serious scenarios. In case outweighs all the work I did on case applies. Warming turns all their area violence arguments and affects indigenous people the most because they live on reservations with barren land. Permutation do both. Permutation do the alternative. The link debate is super generic. I don't have to go to it until the block. Instead of colonialism, can't explain the impacts and yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Reasons to reject the team.
Process counter plans and conditionality.
Okay, R&D counterplan, the intellectual capital just said, you read this card, that patents are the biggest internal link to broader economic growth. How does the auctions counterplan not result that, if that's the biggest factor in terms of like how the economy grows?
I mean, that was a deficit to the R&D counterplan.
Yeah, but like, the argument you made logically applies to all the arguments.
If
filing patents is the biggest reason why.
I mean, if you're just trying to make the argument like the auctions can also create patents, sure, but that doesn't like I don't know where that gets you.
The wages dissent,
It's a process counterplan.
the labor monopoly argument. What is that?
Yeah, so basically how companies are regulating wages changes and means the wages will stay low.
So the argument is just that like the power has shifted to the like companies and now wages are low.
Yes, it has things like weaker unions, decayed minimum wage, things like that.
Our evidence from this month says that wages are like increasing and that power has shifted. How does your evidence assume that?
I mean, I think your evidence just says that some stuff's gone up a couple percentage points. That's as conclusive as it gets. Ours says that like structural claims about how like the economy is functioning now, things like inflation, are tilting power.
Okay. The Exton
Which
card,
means that, like the impact's inevitable, even if it's like good now.
Yeah, the Exton card says that immigrants do complementary jobs. Can that be spun as offense, or is that exclusively like they don't trade off on wages?
It can be spot on too.
Okay, then let's talk about it. The Exton card says, quote, foreigners contributed to innovation and productivity growth in science and tech. Highly skilled immigrants have been crucial to the growth in IT, which has revolutionized production in many. Where does it talk about wages?
So one thing that I think, excuse me, the entrepreneurship stuff And the 1AC also applies because it says Indian immigrants form startup companies. So startup companies would produce, according to our Hernandez evidence, up to thousands of jobs.
Okay, the auctions counterclaim, the nanotechnology solvency deficit, is about small companies being outcompeted. How does the plan cannot resolve that?
Like, even if they get a voice, that doesn't mean that like they still get opportunities. Like,
How?
big companies will still look more appealing. They're able to like swallow.
Yeah, but if they're not competing with big companies in terms of gaining those visas, why is there a trade-off?
Well, I
And
don't.
also, if big companies are appealing, why isn't that also like to the plan?
So,
If immigrants want to go to big companies, under both the
We would say that like
counterclaim and
nanotech companies are sponsoring the status quo, and the counterclaim gives them an advantage.
Okay,
Gives big companies an advantage.
the collusion card you say is it's tagged as collusion, but the argument is just that like it's difficult to manage. What's the terminal impact of that?
Sure, it's just like inefficiencies, which can cause things like
Okay,
delay or
inefficiencies
inability to
and-
actually like administrate it correctly.
So yeah, but what are those inefficiencies, and why does that like reduce the ability to administer visas?
Okay, it says the time dimension would affect the duration because it fails to address short-term needs, is what it argues. So i.e., if we win the slogan that's coming,
Okay.
and the auction counterclaim takes a while, it risks not resolving the next time. Or more.
Okay, we have string.
Reasons to reject the team we just processed in condo?
Yep. Okay, where is it?
Auctions, econ, nanotech.
Whenever you want. There's names on.
Auctions, econ, yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Anyone not ready? The counterplan solves best and increases immigration of both high and low skilled workers by creating a quarterly auction that lets in the workers that employers want, ensures growth and no oversupply of workers because permit numbers can be adjusted based on current economic conditions in the real estate market, allows trading in permits and they're no longer in use. The F doesn't consider market forces leading to wage depressions, the number of workers increases. None other evidence assumes the independent commission that runs the auction, which means their auction fails arguments don't apply. An auction visas boost U.S. competitiveness because it only gets top tier immigrants economists. 10 Americans go to a visa for the high school can run out no matter of visa auctioning. American immigrant visas would all keep the ability to mitigate migration. Those who desire to most of the president governments to retain control over how many immigrants came more responding to changing labor market conditions. Immigrants under by such system would be those who must garner the biggest economic benefit of migrating their first solvency deficit. One, the counterplan fee outside a certain number of permits are set aside for small businesses to ensure that larger companies aren't buying too many. Two, their evidence doesn't assume the objective commission that oversees the auction puts in place regulations and recommends policies to ensure the smooth functioning of the auction. Means even if for 1 quarter small businesses are hurt, that could be reversed in the next quarter. And a tradable market will make employers, including small businesses, more willing to participate in its economy. 15, one concern about auction fees is its ability to pay auction permits to employers. To avoid this concern, the government can offer loans to auction winners, tradable permits, and employees who are willing to participate in auctions by reducing the risk of holding permits. They no longer need small businesses find a reasonable market more accessible. They said total factor productivity, but this doesn't matter. This solvency deficit doesn't matter because the counterplan lists the number of workers that businesses want, which means that we always have a sufficient number of workers to fill in gaps within the workforce. They said entrepreneurs, but one, this don't impact this argument. No explanation of why entrepreneurs are key to solving the F2. Entrepreneurs are not a large part of the workforce. Means that even if there is an impact to this argument, is that weighed by the benefits of the counterplan. 3 is that the AFTA doesn't solve them because entrepreneurs still have to go through the EB-5 visa application and are required to invest at least $1 million or to get a visa. And the high price deters entrepreneurs. They said decreasing high school. The fourth solvency deficit they make is just about why point systems are better, but auctions are superior to point system. That's body. 15 auction system has advantages over a point system. A point system requires determining the importance of migrants' attributes, and auction systems not require such decisions. The point systems ensure that immigrants will have the characteristics that avoid most employers. The system auctions permits to employers does. And auctioning to domestic companies solves all the dissets to auction social. One, auctions for domestic companies prevent unwanted distribution effects of immigration. Companies must pay a portion of what they gain for the purchase of immigration licenses to never confuse the compensate for detrimental effects on workers if can afford it. They said it's impossible to administer, but a quarterly system, yes, it's good. 1, an adjustment would still be gradual over time, but not deviate that much from past prices. 2, there would be a maximum minimum reserve price, which means it's predictable for employees. 3 is that flexibility is good, ensures that immigration responds to economic conditions and doesn't lead to low wages. 4 is that quotas are not the problem. The number of visas are adjusted quarterly based on degree, and they said visa hoarding, but I already answered that with the small businesses stuff above. Collusion was also the collusion stuff was already answered above when I answered the OECD card. They said permutation, the permutation, that's a functionally permutation to both, but it's 1, it's severance where it doesn't solve. The counterplan creates a mechanism by which visas can be decreased based upon the auction price. The plan locks in an increase in visa numbers. This undermines the auction system because it guarantees that there are too many visas flooding the market and ruins the ability to create a price mechanism. That's the innocent side of it. They say it has to have the option of a decrease to function accurately. 2, links to our labor markets net benefit. The permutation destroys confidence that the system will protect labor markets and wages by making decisions in advance of the commission's auction. This destroys the economy of G.10. The regime governing labor markets should be flexible, capable of evolving into a public confidence in and acceptance of the system. Flexible system will promote efficiency, helping to mitigate the negative effects of immigration use. Workers' predictability requires avoiding dramatic fluctuations. It will self-facilitate a stable flow migration machine that adjusts in response to changed circumstances. Could also be predictable through the permutations. Congress dictated the commission that visa levels must be increased no matter what. This prevents flexible response to labor market where G.10 constraints would undermine corporate creating the commission favor predictability, stability, and constraint. They said process counterplans that will be answered in the one are also not a process counterplan, which means this doesn't apply here. Permutation to the permutation to the counterplan. The counterplan is a distinct option from the plan. It's open-ended with the plan mandates a specific outcome. Rodriguez and Congress must lay out the principles that provide a fair agency decision-making but are open to permit the agency termination and change in severs the plan. The counterplan includes the possibility that the plan isn't done. Its recommendations could even be the opposite of the plan if economic or labor market data dictated. This is a voting issue. All of the plan's advantages derived from claims of certainty about the immigration and the economy. They should be forced to defend those claims. It's a core assumption of the 1AC and severing. It means no negative arguments are competitive. B, this counterplan is a core argument in the literature. All the negative benefit evidence is directly comparative between it and the app. It's not a contrived counterplan that consults. It's vital to topic education. Excluding it based on arbitrary theoretical arguments undermines the a core purpose of debate. Sever should, it means must and requires immediate legal effects. Numbers 94, certain context mandated construction of the term should is more than indicating purposes should mean the same as must and presente means that the present time the phrase is that which is immediately effective and severs the agent of the plaintiff doesn't include delegation plank, which means it must be implemented by Congress. Rodriguez, 10, the power to make decisions regarding immigration laws comes with Congress. Article proposes the Congress delegate authority to the President to make immigration determinations change away that shift issued from the exclusive control of the to prostitute administrative law. They said conditionality, but it's not conditionality is not a voting issue. Countertermination, three conditional worlds. A, no views. They have no point. Not pointed out in round of use to from this round. B is critical thinking. Forces the after think through interactions across close and innovate neg arguments, which is the purpose of debate. And those are typical strategy because you have to look at multiple worlds. 2, C is neg flex. We can't develop case next to every app. Conditional advocacies are key to find the best strategy. Others are forced to do. An insurmountable amount of research which collapses the death of education. We can read multiple dissents, making times to inevitable default to reasonability. 3, conditional world check against the routine. Reject the argument, not the team. Well, that's also the neg flex and critical thinking skills are also a judge case because they said perm to plan. One half visa auctions. It still links to the wages. It still links to wages because there's still a massive influx of immigrants, which are not checked back against. So they said we link to wages, but one, we don't link to an oversupply of labor because government is able to both increase and decrease the number of permits available. Means that once an oversupply is being approached, the government decreases the amount of permits available. Also, they also wouldn't be an oversupply because the amount of workers landed is based on market conditions, which means that they. When there's demand for this workers, they let it move. When there's not, they won't be. Go on to case on the econ advantage. The economy is booming several metrics. First is GDP is at 2.8% and could cross 3%. 2 is productivity is growing at 1.3% according to the Fed. 3 is employment turned a corner in September each month since we've added hundreds of thousands of job employment. As of the lowest in 18 years for GDP per capita, it's at the highest level ever. That's our Yandel and Irwin evidence prefer our descriptive to their predictive evidence. A host of intervening factors make economic forecasts inherently inaccurate. Forecasters have an incentive to rely on hyperbole to increase their readership. You should be proactively skeptical of impending recession when the economy is great by all standards. If you win this argument, it means you prioritize short-term class because the threshold for their impact is too evasive. You can also consider calcium evidence that talks about how 304,000 jobs were added last month. We've also added jobs for 100 consecutive months, which only bolsters our claim here. They said, I'll go to the STEM shortage debate. There's no shortage now. One Smith studies prove that concerns of shortage have existed since World War II. They haven't answered the thesis of its argument that claims of shortage are marked by poor quality data and methodological challenges. You should be skeptical of their evidence claiming a shortage because it comes from people in the tech industry. They have a vested interest in maintaining accounts of a crisis because doing so means they'll allocate additional resources. And even if his studies range from World War I to the 90s, they're still applicable because they cite empirics that determine future shortages. Tech companies will always claim there's STEM shortages to benefit the economy, which proves the gap is no different. And no STEM shortage economic indicators proof. Francis 18, the issue historically fell upon a initial alarm, but some labor shortage results are steep because of high levels of inequality among the education provided to U.S. students in U.S. compared to very small countries or city-states. U.S. produces graduate subset fields, but produces them in other structured research involvement, finding creative preservers incentives for university to increase the production of critical evidence shortages. And some if there were to be rising real wage for the occupation, higher employment growth, and low unemployment rates. And this is a method debate. Their authors can't even define shortage. Smith 17. Empirical ways for shortage considers the question of textile and brewery to some demand, trying to understand 3 key terms: science, engineers, and shortage of educational qualifications were little relationship to labor definitions. We use equals and jobs not categorized as engineering, define the term shortage of greater complexity. Shortage makes the number of scientists and engineers less than the number dictated by social criterion. Shortage makes standardized the number of scientists needed is greater than the supply. The prevailing weight of market definition shortage that will allow you to define a difference in the concept is understood by employers in the labor market economy. It's important not to underestimate threats. Go into the nanotech advantage. Nanotech is bad for unsustainable growth of nanoscale solar may be curtailed due to its reliance on rare earth minerals. Because of this reliance, nanotech will never be able to contribute more than 2% of global energy demand. That's really not evidence. 2 is that nanotechnology is bad for human health. There could be in Morrison. 07 nanoparticles may be detectable to reduce the environment, creating difficulties for remediation. High levels of PM10 are associated with increased morbidity and mortality to respiratory and cardiovascular disease and inhalation. Particulate matter have been shown to cause inflammation of the lungs and with dysfunction, market dysfunction. And there's no impact to warming. We have, yes, we've already passed the 410 ppm in April and reached above 411 ppm in May. There's science to say is the threshold for global warming proves that their impact should have already been triggered. That's our Lurie evidence. That's a reason to prefer because it's, yes, our evidence is the consensus on scientists. We have 434. Or 28.
You good? All right, let's start on the econ page. You make this argument about predictive evidence and forecasting for the economy. If forecasting is inaccurate, then how do the auctioneers and Congress recommend actually good policy?
The evidence here is just talking about making economic forecasts in the sense that people that are, I guess, not involved with it or people writing in the media tend to have an effect of hyperbolizing things like hyperbolizing to increase things like their readership. The people working the auction don't have the same incentive to do that. They have no
Wow.
readership that they're talking to, so they have no incentive to hyperbolize about economic
So
forecasts.
who makes up the committee that
They're
does
also-
the analysis? Like, if it's economists, then don't they all have their own bases? that
Sure, they're also
built in?
using things like labor statistics and census statistics to determine where employers need to be filled.
Okay, census statistics.
Not census statistics, sorry, I
Okay.
meant like labor statistics from like the CBO.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions about the counterplan. So, I'm really tired. I forgot what I was gonna say, not gonna lie. But, okay, so entrepreneurs, we say that's like. My brain's not working.
Sure,
It's
we
not
say
like-
that
Can I ask you a
for the
question?
entrepreneur stuff, we're talking about how even if like you win that entrepreneurs are deficit to the counterplan, your app doesn't solve them because entrepreneurs still have to go through things like the EB-5 visa application process is how entrepreneurs come in,
actually-
which you don't solve.
Okay,
I
so
don't know what the
if,
question was, but that's something.
I'm having so much trouble asking questions right now. Okay, so what I was gonna ask is if companies dictate how many immigrants, if the auction is dictated about how many immigrants companies want, how does that affect things like total factor productivity? Our evidence says that a massive influx of immigrants is important to maintain 3%
Yeah,
growth,
so-
even if it is more than there are jobs available, because it creates demand pools in the economy. How does the
Well, we think that you only need to fill in when there is lack of demand. If you are right that there is a shortage now, the counterplan would fill in those workers necessary, which we think is enough to be able to solve.
Okay, the permutation debate, you make an argument that it goes through Congress and Congress makes recommendations. You also make a severance argument that that on permutation due to the counterplan, that it severs because,
We didn't say that we are Congress, we're
Severs
not
the agent?
Congress.
you
We're
said
saying
that,
that you are Congress because immigration decisions go through Congress, we're an independent
okay,
agency.
but doesn't the counterplan also use Congress to dictate recommendations for visa
No, it
caps?
doesn't go through Congress, which means it's distinct.
Are you sure?
We read a card about how you are Congress, we are not that. We are not the agent, Congress is not the one that is passing
Who
the
establishes the
counterplan.
commission then?
That doesn't mean that they're the ones making the decisions on the auction. That's completely distinct.
Okay, the Smith evidence, where it doesn't mention nanotechnology once in any of the.
It's talking, you have read cards that are just about like STEM workers generally. It talks about how there is enough STEM workers to be able to fill in those positions.
Okay.
We also read other evidence about it.
Sleep deprivation is bad.
Keyword is the nanotech advantage. The auctions counterplan, just the process counterplan. The R&D counterplan. The base disad. The K. And then the wages disad.
Advantage 2, auctions, R&D, base, K?
Base K wages.
There you go. That. That is what you said.
Alright, are we good?
No, I don't have, you sent something?
This? Yeah.
Oh, I just haven't gotten it.
Oh, wait. Maybe I did not Okay, now she's my bad.
I just got it.
Okay, yeah, let me just download it. Okay.
Alright, everyone good?
Cool.
Adaptation solves warming. Mendelssohn 15. Climate change population depends on no mitigation, no adaptation on monthly events. It takes a very long time for greenhouse gases to although there's a long life, it takes century for the long run temperature to be reached. Study suggested 5.2% of income most sectors respond to temperature, hill-shaped patch, and adaptation very effective farms. Farmers and people will change their behavior assuming zero. Adaptation is not realistic. Auctions, counterplan process, counterplans are good. Subpoint A, test the app. Counterplan is non-topical because it fiats non-topical actors and negates the app governmental regulation mechanism. Second, solves predictability and ground ensures relevant literature-based centered around the core controversy of the topic. Limits out process counterplans with no contestation. Third, process counterplan. Process education is good. It forces students to research about the avenues for planned passions. Increases political literacy in this real world. Forces you to learn about how to navigate complex bureaucratic structures. R&D, counterplan, concede. Permutation, do both. Face decide. Concede, there's no impact, then shut down, upset them. No risk of offense. K, concede, permutation, do both. Not going for it. Wages. We both agree on the terminal impact means it's only a question of who gets there faster will win, that a short-term decline in wages drastically outweighs their econ impact. Turns case, subpoint A, low wages increase turnover and reduce productivity is a negative feedback loop. Murs and Lynn at 15, low wages all contribute to the tightening of scarcity, track performance, innovation, safety, and productivity can all impede the organization functioning. There are significant differences between those who experience economic scarcity temporarily and those who experience it relatively permanent. People may experience several concurrent negative shocks that can rarely devolve. Second, turns off the magnet, deters high-skilled workers and upends productivity. Markovich, 18, high turnover risk negatively affected company by retaining employees. Companies can provide higher caliber workforce, including hiring expensive training labor, while sales and productivity expenses result from low productivity or lost customer base. A high turnover rate result in low employee morale. New employees are not immune, and lower productivity result in the overall number of employees are inexperienced employees. The first argument, they say it doesn't make any sense. No, I'll go to the uniqueness level here. Wages are on the raise now. Subpoint A is an employment cost index. Extended mood economy evidence. Wages are constantly increasing now. It's only its best study of wages because it takes into account inflation and says that companies are still hiking pay. Subpoint B, the employment watch. CPA 130, the employment watch started a new year with like gains hourly earnings growth at 0.249% hourly earnings growth and has improved each month since hourly wages now at 26.88% at 0.04% increase in January. Recent losses seen this month with debated uncertainty caused by government shutdown doesn't appear to have a major negative effect. Subpoint C is labor market is especially tight. Small businesses prove Williams 1-2. Small businesses closed 2018 with slowing job growth, lower reading and reflection. Tight labor market 3.7% unemployment rate in November was the lowest since 1969. Reading a small business health is important because small businesses represent nearly 95% of U.S. employers and hourly earnings average 26.95% per hour, up to 2.4% compared to December 2017. They say labor a monopoly. No, all of our uniqueness evidence takes this into account and says that it's shifted into the employee's favor right now, and that they're demanding higher wages, and that is necessarily good. Second is that this last card I read says that specifically small businesses account for 95% of the total number of jobs. They with collective bargaining are able to persuade them, which means their monopolies that they talk about don't solve the uniqueness debate. I already did that. The link debate, the plan link. Subpoint A, the correlation is true. Borges, 16 minutes for many Americans get inflation of immigrants hurt their prospects significantly when the supply of workers goes to the rise of firms up to be higher workers go down. Immigrants admitted have increased the size of the low-skilled workforce of 25%. The earnings with this group dropped by $1,500 a year. Firms will dismiss their current workforce when they find cheaper immigrant workers. Second, high-skilled link. Yes, it's specific to the app, which takes out their first analytic. It was already 18 EDV says fewer American jobs, but businesses leaving bankruptcy would be so tedious that few Americans outside of Congress buy into the DHS's decision to expand the employment pool by 15,000. Ignores that defies the high labor market's inherent value of U.S. workers. Each unemployment visa denies an opportunity to work, displaces a U.S. worker untenable in today's soft labor market, confirmed by comprehensive empirical and statistical evidence. For just 10% increase in the size of immigrants reduce the wage of native born men and African by 3.7%, and all native born workers by 2.5%. Immigration has the largest negative impact on poorest Americans. Immigration reduces the wage of Latin native high school dropouts by 2.5%. Little evidence immigration creates net gains for native born Americans. Onto their turns, they frame them as no link arguments, which means you hold them to that. They can't go for offense framing. There's a time frame distinction between when the link happens and when any risk of the link turn happens. Subpoint A is the complementary jobs. Our impact is short term there. Requires Xane flows neg. Xane 18 U.S. multinational companies in the high-tech sector have also turned to high-skilled, well-trained Indian immigrants to manage their subsidiaries they have established to capitalize on lower wages. Their authors agree that immigrants decrease wages from 15. First, they don't. The economists use it to look at the world to determine the actual. Let's go to the fine print. Relying on the critique of Perry's work. If you compare this with that, you see a huge supply shock. If you assume that all low education workforce are potential substitute for each worker of 23-year-old. Recent Robert from Guatemala, 53-year-old, who proceeded from the high school to the army. Then your model will show less dramatic effect on immigration on wages. Market wages. They conceded wages are the single biggest factor in productivity and economic growth because it's the only thing that spills to the domestic level and aside from just companies and writ large. It means that the per capita GDP is directly affected. There's an independent on the cheaper goods turn. They appeal to cheaper goods and inflation just proves the link. Borges 17 is not rare to see ideological switch and making argument they would never make years earlier. Don't be shocked if they have the same exact economic experts who have been claiming exact opposite for decades. There's no Brown and the hypocrisy of actually they will constantly switch to the former party line to my news. The Trump administration reshapes and fade into history. The innovation turn immigration placement trades off with more productive native innovation. Matloff 17 former foreign students in the U.S. workforce tend to be weaker than their American peers, even like fewer paths they're likely, less likely to work in research and development, have degrees in less selective U.S. universities, market universities, prioritize short-term links. Drug 17 is ensuring that nascent growth because of sustainable dynamic investment that drives productivity growth is crucial and can unleash a virtuous cycle growth because it's durable and self-sustaining.
6:46 starting. I'll just get cards and work on that thing for you. All right. I'll get that the other card you were looking for too. You know what you're talking about? You said you wanted to read.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are you also working on it?
Yeah. Just a little bit. I'm seeing if I can work on the camera.
Do you think you're just doing for the camera?
Yeah, I agree. I'm just gonna send this doc to the email you pulled up. Yeah. Are you good on the decompilation of chemicals?
Yeah. Okay, I should be fine, just getting this stuff, or we good?
150. I'm sending the doc out.
In the meantime, it'll be Advantage 2, Advantage 1, base, auction wages.
There you go.
What's advantage, was advantage 2?
Advantage 2 is nanotech.
Alright. Anyone not ready? Advanced nanotechnology, we'll concede that adaptation solved warming. That takes all the offense. The nanotech Rex Health argument is a brand new argument that was not the one in C. So we shouldn't answer it. 1AR to block sandbagging makes the 1A makes it impossible for me to give the 1AR now an advantage 1. Yes, you should prefer depiction of you should prefer depictions of yearly growth because it's better for forecasting. All of our scenarios are predicated on the fact that 3% growth is going to decline in the status over the long term, which will motivate counterbalance. It will escalate in the status quo. Your only hint at this is that forecasting is all hype. That also applies to the negative as well, where they say that for the short-term forecasting is also equally hype as well because they can be spun to gain increase in readership as well. So it's only a question of warranty. The Fox, what is Fox? These actual economists is that the economy is slated to decline to the status quo. Is slated to decline to the status quo, even though quarterly growth is declining. They say that there's no shortage. Yes, there is a shortage. None of your evidence is you don't need to win the shortage debate because we're going for the total factor productivity. That says that immigrants are key to total factor productivity. That will lead to a massive increase in labor demand, which will create complementary jobs in this as well, and also boost GDP writ large. That means we don't need to win any risk of shortage. But it will answer yes, there is a shortage. The status quo is that the 1AC Hernandez evidence is the lack of entrepreneurs in the status quo, which lack of entrepreneurs, which the 1AC Smith evidence is responsible. Immigrants are the unique group that will create unique for entrepreneurs because they're the ones who create jobs. Base. You have massively screwed up the base flow. You've conceded non-unique, but you've not answered the fact that there is a link turn on the base arguments. Is that the Trump base support is low down the status quo. Only the plan can boost base support because he can spin the plan as a massive win to his base, which will boost base support. That only the impact of this is EU proliferation and Russian first strike that will escalate to global nuclear war. We've already, the 2AC doesn't make this argument, but we have already conceded the fact that the auction counter plan avoids politics, which means that they don't get to claim this as a net benefit. This is a unique offense only for the affirmative. Auctions. First, we'll extend the theory argument that says that the permutation to the counterplan is legitimate because the process counterplans are bad. We have two interpretations. First is that first is that should doesn't mean immediate. That's the dictionary.com. That's dictionary.com 10. And second is that restrictions or limitations by regulations or contract or statute. That's the FLD and the evidence. It's a question of debatability over desirability. Process counterplans making it possible for the app to win its best offense. And it means that we can't actually debate anything about it. Either way, we are winning independent. The base is just set to the auction counterplans as we straight turn it. That's independent offense. Judge kick is you can't no judge kick because it makes it possible for the two-hour to prepare in multiple worlds. Makes it skews the affirmative prep and gives a negative unfair advantage. Wages. First, I'll extend there's no link argument. This is that labor certifications mean that it prevents the massive decrease in the wages. They say they read a bunch of Borges cards. However, Borges changed his mind. Robots are the problems, not immigrants. Means that the impact is non-unique and inevitable. It's justified because they read 15 Eulink's Borges and FEMA 19. The data report at the level of industry that purchased with the robots a higher wages should mean an incentive for investor robots and influx of industrial robots associated with the fall in employment. The entry of an additional robot and reducing employment wages by more than the entry of an additional immigrant exponential growth of robots could disrupt job markets in the next decade or so. They didn't answer a few words. First is prevailing wage determination. They ensure that wages aren't lower. That's Caleb 15. When an employer seeks to employ foreign workers, federal law requires the offered wage not to be used to undercut U.S. workers. The offered wage must meet or exceed the prevailing wage for the position. And either way, it's a question. Since these are highly skilled jobs, it means they will be able to negotiate their wage to the status quo, which means that they will be able to receive wages that are based upon free market processes. And the next argument is that you can cross-apply to Griswold. And this is a link term. The argument says that over the long term, the increased influx of immigrants will actually boost wages because it leads to in such multiple empirical studies that the GDP per capita was raised by 20% as a result of immigration. They also will extend that wages are low now in the status quo. There's multiple warrants for this. First is that first warrant is that what do you mean?
Unions are failing. They didn't
Unions are failing. That's the first warning argument here. That means that the labor negotiations are failing in the status quo, which means that the wages aren't rising enough to counteract against inflation. There's also monopoly power, which means that lower wages are paid to workers. Either way, like we're winning. What else?
Okay, answer the time frame argument. Say that total factor productivity means right when immigrants come
Total
into the
factor
US.
productivity means that right when immigrants come into the U.S., that increases labor demand because those immigrants will also be consuming products, which means that they increase demand in related industries immediately, which means that the distinction between short-term and long-term is entirely
You have
false.
to do things like buy homes and everything.
And they also have to do things like buy homes as well.
Starting now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes.
Type that up?
Yeah.
Alright. Here, I'll just type up that framing stuff for you. It'll go with the block.
be base wages, auctions, April.
Everyone good?
Yep.
On the basis that we conceded the thumbprint, which means it already should have happened, which also it means that the thesis of the link isn't true. It doesn't matter if they win a link chart. If it was low enough at the same point, the counterplan definitely also solves this. They never asked if base was a net benefit to assume that it is. Actually, ignore the last argument. On the wages test, at first, you should frame the debate through sufficiency, framing the high risk, the detached outweigh any solvency deficit they try to go for in the counterplan too. Is that the only question you should ask yourself at the end of the debate is who was able to resolve the biggest internal link to the economy. The fact they didn't answer our argument about wages being the biggest internal link to productivity means you should give us high leeway on this. 3 is that not answering the shortage stuff is damning for them coming out of the 1 year, because it means A, they're not able to solve because you cannot bring in workers if there isn't a shortage already. Immigration will prevent them from happening, or B, they link because they lead to an oversupply of workers, because they lead to an oversupply of workers, which increases things like competition among workers. Which decreases things like competition, which means that businesses are incentivized to pay higher wages to workers. They said Boris changed his mind, but actually no, I'm going to do the impact stuff here. I don't need to spend a lot of time on it since we both have the same impact, but I don't need to spend a lot of time on it since we both have the same impact, but wage growth leads to economic instability when the bottom 90%, which are the primary consumer costs, have spending money in important industries, at least to economic stagnation. This leads to conflict because rival states being bold and challenge the U.S.'s global position and financial constraint make way from that, more likely making the escalation of nuclear war quicker. They said Bohr has changed his mind, but yes, it says that robots leads to a decrease in wages, but it doesn't make the claim that immigrants don't lead to a decrease in wages, which means that this argument doesn't apply here. They said prevailing wages, but yes, there's a trade-off. I'll do the link debate here. Our extender is already evidence that says that the EPV says no opportunities to existing U.S. workers because it ignores things like tight labor market value. You should prefer our evidence because it's based in empirical and statistical evidence. That's our Bohr's evidence that says that you should prefer because it says that a 10% increase in immigration reduced wages by 2.5%, which especially affected people like affected people like poor Americans. Also, the shortage debate is a reason why we should win the link debate. I'll do the shortage debate here first. So that claims of STEM shortage are based in the first is that there's a difference between labor definition and companies' definition of STEM workers. Labor definitions are based on skills and not degrees, but STEM companies use degrees to define their workforce. They can falsely claim there's a shortage. Research companies say that STEM workers have degrees, but half the jobs they list as STEM don't require degrees in engineering or other fields like things like construction and management, infrastructure jobs. That's our Smith evidence in 3. Even if there are shortages, they're limited to particular specializations of sector of STEM, not to all fields. Also, there are no shortage evidence is flawed because it comes from people in the tech industry who have vested interest in saying there is a shortage because they get allocated more resources. Yes, it does control the lane because if you win that there's no shortage, insurgent causes an oversupply to that word already in the overview. They said in the long term they boost things like wages, but they have been not answered our reading of their own Exene evidence that says that there is a trade-off because U.S. it sets the example of how U.S. multinational companies turn to Indian immigrants to manage subsidiaries because they were able to give them lower wages. Proves that there is a trade-off over immigrants in the U.S. Also, they haven't sufficiently answered the short-term versus long-term distinction. The link is faster than the link term, which is the reason to prefer it. There are link-term cards are all about the long-term impacts the immigrants have. Our link evidence is as soon as there's an influx of workers, there will be an immediate decrease in wages because of a lack of competition. The time frame differential means that even if they link the link term debate, you should still prefer our link. Say said unions are failing now, which means wages aren't rising, but that's not true because you can extend that the employment cost index is a better indicator because it says that wages are increasing now. Prefer because it assumes that inflation. Also, the employment watch says are increasing now because things like employment hourly earnings have improved each month since August. The wages are now at 26.88%. That's our CPA evidence. CPA evidence is the total factor of productivity increases labor demand, but when it articulates this as consumption, which the counterplan resolves because it still brings in the same amount of people, which means this isn't a unique unique to the dispatch. He was at Borehouse sources because he says the impact of the consumption is proven, which means that it has a net negative effect. I'll do the turns case work here. It talks about so they can see that the wages dispatch turns the case in two levels. It directly implicates the internal links that 2ER work go for. One, it decreases productivity with lower wages. Employees are incentivized to work as harder, more likely to switch jobs in search of higher paying ones, which erodes the ability for companies to innovate and solve for things like nanotech. There's early on evidence to be two-way turns off the magnet because immigrants come to the U.S. in search of better economic futures, means they won't feel incentive to come if their wages are too low. Go into the auctions counterplan. I don't have to do much work here since they barely answered it, but no, permutation to the counterplan is not legitimate. They haven't answered any of my arguments for why it is, which means you shouldn't give them high leeway. It's ever stood, which means must and requires immediate legal effect. We are immediate, which means that we are competitive with them. Also severs the agent because Congress would be the one doing the plan, which it wouldn't be in this quote. They say process counterplans are bad, but they haven't done enough work here for this to be a viable 2AR option. You can assign that it's key to test the app. It's non-topical because if yes, non-topical actors, they also aren't a counterplan, which means a process counterplan, which means this doesn't apply. We saw predictability in ground because interest relevant literature we centered around the core controversy of the topic. Also, it's good because it forces students to research about the avenues for plan passage, increases political literacy, and is more real world. And as the base test independent test, I already answered that on the base test.
Uh, 150.
I mean, I think I'll.
Okay. Base auctions wages. I guess like the case debate will be on like wages, just because it's like basically the same thing as for the tumor. So I need stuff.
Yeah.
But can you? I need to be. Everybody good?
The base dissent, they still messed it up. They say the counterplan solves it. There's no explanation as to how, and the blog already said that the counterplan avoids politics, which means that we don't have to really do a lot of work here. They say they conceded a number. The blog doesn't answer this, so I don't really need to do a lot of work. Trump has still lost base support because of the shutdown, but the plan is responds win because he supports marriage-based immigration. The impact of base losses in the status quo is EU pro-lift and Russia first strike the escalating nuclear war. We've already explicitly conceded that the auction counterplan avoids the base dissent, which means they can't access it. It was offense for the app. The NIC doesn't indicate that base was not a net benefit for the auctions counterplan, which means they can't evaluate it. Even if you buy that the kick was based off of Thumper, our evidence is specific to how Trump's base reacts to the status quo post-shutdown. Only our evidence assumes how the base reacts post-shutdown. That's the uniqueness evidence and the Lincoln evidence. That's the Greenwood and the Robbins evidence, which both indicate that Trump would spin the plan as win. Those both avoid diversionary conflict. Independent dissents to both advantages. It happens immediately. It means that it accesses our time frame arguments on the wages dissent. Also means that the auctions counterplan can't solve, which means it's a dissent to the counterplan. It also accesses all their time frame framing arguments about impact evaluation on the dissent. Go to the counterplan. I'm just going to go for permutation to the counterplan here. They got to with 40 seconds left. It's not sufficient. First argument I'll make is there's still no judge kick, which means if we win the permutation, we win the debate, because obviously the counterplan would avoid the wages dissent as for the 2-hour, which means that don't make the 2-hour impossible. They don't keep the counterplan for them based off the permutation. The 2-hour already has to go for, has to defend multiple worlds, which makes it impossible to be affirmative. Their first argument is that it serves the immediacy. They didn't answer our interpretation of should, which says that it's to express condition, not immediacy, which means that that's the only legitimate argument they have for competition. It's not a process counterplan argument per se, but our theory argument is that counterplans that are not distinct from the plan or result of the plan are bad because they make it impossible to read add-ons, make it impossible to use our best offense. This turns their only standard argument, which is it's key to test the app, because it doesn't test the app because it makes it impossible for us to weigh offense. It swallows all the advantage ground, makes it impossible to read add-ons because they can just say that the counterplan would have the same effect as the only C, which makes it impossible to debate. These both justify permutation to the counterplan because the counterplan is theoretically abusive. They say it's core of the topic. That doesn't matter. If it's they consider our debatability over desirability framing, which is clearly in the 1AR that says that even if they win that it's desirable because it's core of the topic or it's not topical, this doesn't matter, even if it's real world, because it's a question of debatability. If they read so many planks that some of them aren't even backed by solvency advocates, it makes it impossible to affirm because they can just fiat out of solvency deficits and don't give us access to any any add-ons or any ability to access offense against a counterplan, which justifies permutation to the counterplan, the wages dissent. I really just need to go for a couple of inevitability arguments to win the debate first, because we have the base dissent as an independent term. Diversionary war outweighs the economic decline because Trump reacts immediately because of base lash out. They haven't specified a threshold for wage decline. They say wages decline by 2.5% and wages do decline. There's no threshold identified in the 2-hour to how much wages have to decline to cause economic collapse, which should give you skepticism on voting for the impact. Even if you think they are way ahead on the dissent, they haven't provided any sort of threshold for when wages collapse actually cause economic decline, which means you should assume that Trump lashes out before. The next argument is the Borges evidence. They say that it still means immigration. It still means immigration suppress wages. That's not what our argument is. Borges says that there are other factors that affect wages that are inevitable. This means that this has two, like robots, which means that the workers get replaced. This has two implications. First is that the link is not unique because there are other things that depress wages. It means that technological innovations mean that the link is inevitable. It means this also means that impact is not unique to not unique because other factors decrease wages. Even if they win that wages are high now, then other evidence assumes things like robots, which means you should defer affirmative. Like I said, there's no threshold, which means that we really don't need to rely on the shortage arguments. These really don't matter because the internal we're not going for is shortage is total factor productivity, which is an independent link term. They haven't answered the thesis of our argument, which is when immigrants come to the United States, they have to buy things, they have to invest, they create new demand on products because a massive influx of immigrants creates more demand on products. They also do things like buy houses. These are direct injections to the economy which create feedback loops of supply and demand. Also, working gives them the ability to create more, to accumulate wealth, which doesn't answer their offense. I've seen evidence that immigrants do complementary jobs. It's not a negative argument because they literally say that the argument, the re-highlighting says that the lower wages go to immigrants. It doesn't say that native wages get lowered. It says that immigrants might get paid a little bit less than native workers. This isn't a link for them because all their links are based off of native pay and native wages being decreased. I've seen evidence that says at worst, immigrants get paid less, which they don't have an impact to or an internal link to, which means it's not a link. The only other argument here is that there's the turns case arguments. First, it doesn't matter because the inevitability of wage decline means that there will be a decline in lack of productivity, which means there's only a risk of the app's also.
Two cheers for Tyler's.
Also a good idea.
Charge it into UG Austin. You get into UG Austin. Sean.
What chances are there?
that's